Today we are looking at Asus, because we are always in search of incredible. This is how it arrives. So if you live in an area where they leave this stuff on your porch, make sure you ship it somewhere else, because somebody might just snatch it. So what's in the box, you may ask? Let's have a look. In the box, you'll get a backpack. This beautiful, cheap-looking backpack. I'm not sure why they even put it there, but it looks incredibly cheap and it's very light. That's probably the only advantage of it, but I would not put this laptop into this bag. Save some money, don't put this garbage into the box. Alright, next. What else is in the box? You'll get one of these. And as you can guess from the logo on the box, this is a charger box. Inside is a standard charger that looks like this. And this is the identical charger to the last year's model, so we're not going to talk about it. What else, you may ask? Well, let's see. The next box contains the laptop and all the accessories for it. And that's how it opens up. Same as the last year's one. So there's nothing special about it. There's a place for the laptop, there's a place for the pen, and there's a place for the wrist support. Nothing else. In the pouch here, there are some manuals, and that's about it. So nothing interesting. Here is the gem itself. That's how it looks like from the outside, and that's how it arrives with the sticker on top. So let's have a look what we have in here. This is an OLED 4K UHD display. This is an ultra-fine OLED display, and it was specifically created for the creators and the overall creative community. So I'm not quite sure about that, and you'll know why shortly. Then they mention here you have the Ergonomics Screenpad Plus, the GeForce RTX 3070, which is great because you can actually play on this thing, and it does the job pretty good. Dual 45-watt fan, again, thumbs up. Wi-Fi 6, great. Control panel, garbage. Totally unusable, not user-friendly, and very limited. Stylus, we'll talk about it. And two Thunderbolt 3 USB-Cs. We'll talk about it shortly as well. Let's roll. Before we even jump inside of this machine and open it up, let's look outside what we got here. The casing is aluminum. It's a fingerprint magnet, but it's beautiful and there is nothing to complain about. But what we should pay attention to are the ports it has. It pretty much has none. So on one side it has one standard USB-A port, then slightly lower you have two USB-C ports, and that's it where you can plug in your stuff. So if this laptop is created for the creative community, where is the card reader? Where is the extra USBs? Because I have plenty of stuff that I use that I have to plug in. And for the God's sake, where is the Ethernet port? There is no Ethernet port on this machine whatsoever, on any side, wherever you look. Really? So how do I connect to my network drives? And speaking of the network drives, this machine comes with only one SSD slot inside, so it's pretty hard to upgrade it without reinstalling the Windows back and forward. Sandwich here of stuff on top of the SSD. Wonder if I can see what's under it. Under this, yeah, that's the models they use. So what you end up using a lot is one of these guys. You end up using the dongles. And these come in the variety of configurations, of course, but one of the main complaints, so this is my right hand. Wait, do you hear that? No? Me neither. I'm not hearing you clicking the like and the subscribe button and the bell icon on the side. Oh, you want to see the full video first? Okay. All right, let's continue. That's where I hold my mouse. And all the USB ports are on the right side as well. So it seems to me that initially this laptop was not designed to be used as a standalone machine on your desk. And they would expect you to have it hanging on some kind of mount and use a separate keyboard and use a separate mouse, and thus would not interfere with the machine itself. That's where I have some questions. But in any case, if you plug in your dongle, so I have the USB-A dongle, then it's more like at the far corner here. But if I have any dongle with the USB-C plug, then it would be straight on the way of my mouse work area, and it would be impossible to use. So you would end up shifting the machine to the side further and further all the time, because bending the dongle's cable around this area is a bad idea. Over the time it will break. So that's definitely a minus. The mistake they didn't correct from the last year's machine. At the same time, the HDMI port, power port and headphone jack port are in a perfect position, and they would not interfere with your work in any way, the way they should be. With the last year's machine, I had a lot of problems with the cooling. It would just overheat in the standalone mode without any work happening in the background. So on this machine, they fixed it, and there is plenty of ventilation around it. So there is one vent, another one here, some more here, more at the bottom here. And of course, when you lift it, your screen comes up, the secondary screen. And that was the main problem with the last year's model. The screen was attached to the frame, and because the screen itself heats up, it would lead to overheating of the entire machine, which was not great, of course. So in this year's models, they fixed it. Thank you, Asus. Next is accessibility, right? How easy is it to log in? It's pretty easy. You just press the power button, which is not the most convenient button on the keyboard, as it's located right at the top of your touchpad, and sometime by mistake you press it because you're thinking it's a delete button, and you end up turning off the machine. Luckily, it turns on and turns off in a snap of a finger. There is no fingerprint reader, and the only way for you to log in without the password is through the camera, and it works flawlessly. In fact, it's constantly checking if you're looking at the monitor, and as soon as you turn away or step aside, it will lock your computer. And depending on the setting, it might even turn it off for you, or put it in a sleep mode, to be precise. So as soon as you arrive, click any of the buttons, it turns on, and you're good to go. Let's talk about ergonomics. As I mentioned earlier, this keyboard is completely not made to be used on a regular basis. And the reason for that is it's shifted to the left, and this is the same keyboard you had on this machine last year. And because it's shifted to the left and is located closer to the bottom, you end up sliding yourself slightly to the left, because normally your keyboard is in front of you and your brain wants to be in the center of it by default. This is not the case with this thing. The touchpad is garbage as well. It's barely usable, it's not that accurate, and it's made of glass, so your finger tends to stick to it once in a while. I don't know about you, but I have sweaty hands. Speaking of the sweaty hands and the fingerprints, both of these monitors, they are touchscreen. So you can easily work on your stuff, not only with the regular mouse and the keyboard, but also with your hands. But how comfortable is it? Let's have a look. So for example, you're trying to do some work on your monitor here, and naturally you would want to rest your hand against some kind of base, and you end up resting against the lower screen. So what happens? You end up pressing it and the cursor drops down to the bottom screen. So if you want to use touch functionality on the main screen, your hands have to be always in the air. This is a perfect example when the technology is there, but the usability is not. Well, you might say, okay, you have the bottom screen, why not do the touch work on the bottom one? Because you have the keyboard around the lower frame of the monitor, and guess what happens? You end up pressing the buttons. And that's where this thing comes into play. This machine comes with the stylus. It's decent, it's heavy, and it's comfortable to use, at least on a flat surface. But not on the screen, because again, the same issue is there. When you try to draw something, you end up resting your arm either on the screen, so you move the cursor and you cannot draw anymore, or you end up resting your arm on the keyboard and end up pressing all these buttons over here. So this also makes this thing useless and completely unusable, at least in my case. I'm not sure how you guys do it. I tried to do it in the air, holding it up, and as you know, with writing, the more surface pressure you have, the cleaner and the more accurate your drawing or writing is. So this garbage. While we are at the second screen here, let's look at it a bit more. First thing you'll notice compared to the previous year model is that it's positioned properly in front of you. So now you have better angle and better visibility to do anything on the screen, because with the last year's model, it was too flat and it was hard to see, unless your machine is lifted in front of you on some kind of stand, which is not how I use my computers. So this additional screen pad allows you to program some macros and button combinations that you can later take on the screen, position it somewhere where it's comfortable, and let's say if you're trying to edit a video, some button combinations you can turn into one button click on the screen. That's great, right? But this thing tends to crash once in a while, because this additional screen comes with like a built-in software that definitely needs some patching. And either your buttons just disappear or they just simply don't work. No idea why that happens, but bear that in mind. In the ad, they pose it as something perfect for the creators who work with the video editing, and they have those virtual turn knobs that help you adjust the video timeline and scroll through it. Well, turns out it's only applicable to certain softwares, and you cannot really customize it to any software that you use. To have this thing you see on the screen, you have to be using Adobe Premiere, otherwise, good luck. Nevertheless, I still think that this screen is an improvement to the last year's model, because A, it provides proper ventilation, there is plenty of space, better visibility, and you might be able to make it useful for yourself. Now let's jump a little bit lower than the second screen and look at the keyboard. It's a standard keyboard from the last year's model, as I said earlier, but it seems like it's done cheaper this year, because when the music plays, some of the buttons tend to tremble, and quite badly. Here, listen yourself. The buttons of the keyboard are the standard laptop buttons. They're pretty shallow and there is nothing that catches your attention here. There are some additional buttons on the side to change the performance, for example, switch the monitors from top to bottom, or turn off the bottom screen completely. Apart from it, it's a standard keyboard shifted to the left a little bit. As I also mentioned, this thing is still being used with this external wrist support, which is not even magnetic, so it always tends to slide left or right, and it's not that comfortable. Yes, there are some gripping pads at the bottom, but depending on the surface, they're not always that useful, so you end up constantly adjusting it. Maybe it's time to push the keyboard slightly higher. And speaking of magnetic, the pen is magnetic, but this machine is made of aluminium, so it's impossible to attach it to the machine anywhere, and that gives you a perfect opportunity to lose it sooner than you would like to. So back to the touchpad, it's actually not great for lefties either, because it's on the right corner of the machine, so if you're a lefty, you would end up kind of crossing your hand over, which is not that great. Let's talk about sound. Sound on this machine is provided by Harman Kardon, as it says here. But the problem with the sound is that the speakers are located here at the bottom, and every time you try to play some music, it sounds like as if it comes from like a tin can or some kind of barrel. So on top of the vibration from the keyboard I mentioned earlier, the sound is not that clear, at least not up to my liking. But these puppies do get loud, don't get me wrong there. The ventilation is awesome and great on this machine, however, it's loud. Even when it's idling, you constantly hear this buzzing sound. I don't have this sound coming from any of my computers. But nevertheless, unlike the last year's model, this thing has never crashed. Since the day one, it's been working consistently and without any restarts for weeks sometime. So that alone is 1000% improvement over the last year's machine, because that thing was crashing with any kind of workload. And now let's talk about the monitor itself, the primary monitor. So as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a 4K 60 frames per second monitor based on OLED display. But what's interesting, unlike any of the OLEDs I have used, this one doesn't produce a beautiful picture. And the issue starts even when you try to use the machine with its original built-in softwares like a control panel or the screensavers. You see plenty of pixelation, and I'm not sure why Asus didn't properly adjust the software images that they used to the proper resolution of the screen. On top of that, the colors seem to come out slightly different when compared to my other machines, and that could be because the current display is preset for creative work. Maybe I just don't understand it enough. Who knows? But as a day-to-day user, especially if you have several laptops, this difference is quite noticeable. Alright, let's sum up this laptop and decide if it's any good. Is it an improvement versus the last year's? 100%. 1000%. Just simply because it doesn't crash and doesn't overheat. Does it get loud? Yes, it does, because it has two 45-watt cooling fans, but with that, it cools this thing properly and lets you do a lot of things. You can play games, make videos, do some creative stuff without any issues. So what are the downsides of this machine? For me, I think it's not usable as a portable machine. To me, it looks like it was designed to be taken around, carried from one place to another, connected to a dock, and then used with the external keyboard and a mouse. That's how I see it being designed. Because the keyboard is uncomfortable, it's not ergonomic, touchpad is rubbish, and it's on the right side, so if you're a lefty, good luck using it, and say hello to your posture. And if you're working a lot with the creative stuff and you have to use the SD cards, you have to be using a lot of this. So this always tends to be on the way of your mouse work area. The wrist support is there, yes, but is it useful? Would you carry it around with you? Probably not, at least I wouldn't. And then the second display, I found it to be useless for myself because I didn't find any practical use for it. And trust me, I tried. Primary monitor is great, but I think it still needs some work on it, or it's just me being an uneducated brat who is complaining about monitors that I don't understand. If you think so, let me know in the comments below. The speakers are okay, but as I mentioned, they're kind of distant and sound as if they are in a barrel. Probably because of the placement underneath. The SSD upgradability is not there, you cannot upgrade it, and there is no upgradability for your RAM. So when you buy this machine, make sure you buy it with the highest RAM possible, because later you will not be able to upgrade it. The pen was useless as well, and I didn't find any use for it, and I lost it twice while testing the machine. So my conclusion is, this machine is still a prototype. This is more of a prototype that shows what Asus is capable of and how they predict the future of the portable machines. I like the overall direction that Asus is taking with this machine, but it's not ready for a day-to-day consumer. A lot of things still need to be ironed out. So with that said, you can buy something cheaper with pretty much the same hardware inside that would be more useful and usable, which is very important on a daily basis, especially if you are looking for a truly portable machine. So my personal recommendation is to stay away from this machine for now, unless the portability is not important for you. But then if portability is not important, then why even bother with portable machines when you can buy a normal desktop? Let me know what you think in the comments. Is it a fair judgment for this machine or not? I would definitely love to hear that. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button. With that said, I'll see you in my next video. I don't hear you subscribing and clicking that like button. Come on dude, help me play with the YouTube algorithm so that more people can see this video. What, are you still not pressing that button? So I spent hours here and you just don't want to press that like button? Ah, whatever.